Welcome to Loops in Python. In this lecture, we'll learn about loops, the while loop, the for loop, nested for loops, and different loop control statements like pass, break, and continue. What are loops and why do we need them? Say you need to print greetings to 99 friends. Would you rather litter your code with 99 print statements or run a loop with just 2 lines of code? Suppose you have a list with the names of your friends. You can either print hello to them with 1 print statement for each friend, or you can print it once for each name in the list of friends. Whichever way you go, they both print out the same thing. Let's begin with the while loop. This keeps on iterating and executing the statements as long as the condition is true. The moment it turns false, this breaks out. Begin. It checks the condition. If this is true, it executes the block of code that the while loop carries, and then travels back to the condition to evaluate it again. At any time, if the condition is false, it breaks out of the while loop and executes whatever is next. This is a simple while loop that prints out the value of num and keeps decrementing it by 1. Num starts at 3. When it becomes 0, the condition becomes false when evaluated and it breaks out of the loop. One by one, this loop prints out 3, 2, and 1. If we forget to increment or decrement the value of the counter variable, which was num in the previous example, we accidentally create a loop that never ends. This is the same code, but without the decrement statement, and this one simply prints hi. It keeps on printing infinitely. This one has a condition that's always true. 2 is always greater than 1. The output is the same here. It keeps on printing hi until you manually interrupt it by pressing Ctrl and C in the interpreter. Then it raises the exception stop iteration. Such activities can be useful in situations where you need to implement semaphores to battle race conditions or for client-server programming. You haven't seen something like this in a language like C++, but you can put an if statement after the loop. This lets you specify what to execute once the condition turns false. To our previous code, we add an else statement. So this code prints done once the loop exhausts. It prints 3, 2, 1, and done. If you abnormally break out of a loop, or if an exception is raised in the middle of it, the else part is not executed. This code breaks out of the loop when it reaches the value of 1 for num. It prints 3, 2, and when num becomes 1, it breaks out of the loop, and the else isn't executed. You can also fit all of the while loop in one line using semicolons. Observe that parentheses are not necessary with the while statement. Another kind of loop we have is the for loop. This one iterates over a sequence of items. Begin. For each item in sequence, execute the block of code, do it again, and when there's nothing left to iterate on, move on to whatever is next. A for loop looks something like this. The range function here gives us the values 0, 1, and 2 to iterate on. It prints the same. So what is this range function? Range is an inbuilt function that yields a sequence of numbers from 0 to n-1. This is an iterable in the form of a range object. Let's create range objects and then turn them into lists so we can see the values. Range of 10 gives us integers from 0 to 9, which is 10 minus 1. Range of 2 and 7 gives us integers from 2 to 6, which is 7 minus 1. Range of 2, 12 and 2 gives us integers from 2 to 11, but with steps of 2, so it gives us 2, 4, 6, 8 and 10. A step of minus 2 here means that it goes from 12 to 3 right to left with a step of 2. This gives us 12, 10, 8, 6 and 4, but not 2. For 2 to 11 with a step of minus 2, it returns no value because it makes no sense to traverse left from 2 but up to 11. Similarly, 12 to 2 but left to right with a step of 2 makes no sense either. The range function is a convenient way to execute statements a certain number of times. But we can also iterate on a given set of values, like a list. For each item in this list, print the item. So it prints 1, 2, and 3. Similarly for sets, this prints 3 only once because sets do not hold duplicates. The for loop can even iterate on the characters of a string. If we use the len function on a list, we can make range iterate on the indices of that list. We have a list with the names of 3 languages. Range of length of the list is 3. So range gives us 0, 1 and 2. For each value in 0, 1 and 2, it prints the value in the list for this index. List of 0 is Romanian, list of 1 is Spanish, and list of 2 is Gujarati. As with the while loop, the for loop takes an else block to declare what to do once the loop exhausts. For numbers 0 to 4, print the number. Once done, print reached else. Again, if you break out of the loop or if an exception is raised, the else block isn't executed. This code breaks out at num is equal to 3. A simple loop is fine, but we can also put any kind of loop within any other. For inside for, while inside for, and so on. In this code, we decide how many rows of output we need, how many stars we need on each row, and then we print it. Row is from 0 to 4. For each row, star is from 0 to the number of row. When row is 0, it prints 1 star. When it's 1, it prints 2 stars. And so on. We can also replace the if statement with this. This multiplies the string with a single asterisk by the number of times to print it. We can also put any number of loops within another. We can go as deep as we want. Python has 3 loop control statements: pass, break, and continue. These let us break out of normal loop execution. Pass is to implement stubs. When you don't know what to put in a loop yet, you use pass to perform a no operation so you can bypass a syntax error. When we reach the break statement in a loop, it breaks out of the loop and goes straight to the first statement outside the loop. For each letter in the string break, it prints the letter. If the letter is A, it breaks out of the loop. Finally, the continue statement skips the statements after the continue and jumps to the next iteration. This code prints numbers 1 to 8, but when it's 6, it skips the print statement and goes to check the condition again, increments num to 7, and then prints that. So you see, there's no 6 in the output. That's all for loops. Today we discussed for loops and while loop.